Hello students, welcome to all. Today in this lecture we are going to study the precipitation from homogeneous solution, then filtering and washing of the precipitate, then the choice of wash liquid and the conditions for the ideal wash. So let us start with our first point, precipitation from homogeneous solution. Gravimetric estimations are generally performed by adding a solution of precipitant to the solution containing the ion to be precipitated. Here, gravimetric estimations are generally performed by adding what? Solution of precipitant. Generally, precipitating reagent is added and after that precipitate formation takes place. Even with rapid stirring, a relative large amount of supersaturation takes place and it leads to the formation of irregularly shaped particles which may contain occluded impurities. That means during the formation of precipitate, irregular sized particles are formed which may contain occluded impurities. In some cases, it is possible to nearly eliminate the supersaturation by generating the precipitant within the solution. So, in some cases, the impurities, occluded impurities can be minimized, okay, by generating the precipitant within the solution rather than by adding it from the outside the solution. Okay, here in some cases precipitant, that is precipitating agent, is generated within the solution. It is not added from outside to minimize the processes like co-precipitation. Okay, since the precipitant is homogeneously formed at controlled rate throughout the solution and the amount of supersaturation is minimized. If we generate the precipitant within the solution, due to that the amount of supersaturation is reduced. There is a net increase in relatively large particles of a pure precipitate. Okay, when we generate a precipitant within the solution, then there is a net increase in the relatively large particles of the pure precipitate. If we add precipitant from outside the solution, then at that time the particles of precipitate are irregularly shaped. But when we generate the precipitant within the solution, then at that time relatively large particles of pure precipitate are formed. So precipitation from homogeneous solution means the process by which the precipitate is formed within the solution is known as the precipitation from homogeneous solution or homogeneous precipitation. Okay, it is a simple definition. Precipitant is formed within the solution. Okay, the process by which the precipitate is formed within the solution, it is known as precipitation from homogeneous solution or homogeneous precipitation. Okay, let us see one example of homogeneous precipitation. Precipitates in the form of hydroxide or basic salts. Generally urea is soluble in water, we know that. It undergoes slow hydrolysis and shows negligible basic properties. Look at here. Here is the hydrolysis of urea. When urea is added to water, it undergoes slow hydrolysis. Okay, and show basic properties because there is a formation of ammonia, and these properties are used to control the pH of the solution. Generally, urea undergoes hydrolysis to form ammonia and that solution becomes slightly basic. Okay, so these properties are used to control the pH of the solution. The rate of hydrolysis is increases with temperature. Thus, by keeping the definite temperature and definite pH, a given metal ion can be precipitated by ammonia as its hydroxide or basic salt. It is the example of homogeneous precipitation. Here, generally urea is used to form the precipitant within the solution. Urea, it is soluble in water. Okay, after hydrolysis, it forms ammonia, then solution becomes slightly basic, and that property of urea is used to control the pH of solution. And thus by keeping the definite temperature and pH, given metal can be precipitated by ammonia as its hydroxide. Okay, there is a formation of metal hydroxide or basic salt is formed. So sometimes the physical character of the precipitate can be improved by keeping a certain anion present in the solution. Okay, sometime in that solution a certain anion is also present. Okay, and due to the presence of certain anion, the physical character of precipitate can be improved. For example, in the process of precipitation of aluminium as aluminium hydroxide by urea, a dense precipitate is obtained in the presence of succinate ion. Okay, it is an anion. If it is present in the solution and due to its presence, a dense precipitate of aluminium as aluminium hydroxide is obtained. Okay, it is the example of precipitation from homogeneous solution. Okay, precipitate is generally obtained in the form of hydroxide or basic salt. When we use urea, it is an example of precipitation from homogeneous solution. Okay, let us see next point, that is filtering and washing the precipitate. Filtering and washing the precipitate. We know that what is the filtration? It is the process of separation of the precipitate from the mother liquor using some porous medium, that is filter paper. It is known as filtration. Here in filtration we separate the precipitate from its mother liquor by using some porous medium. This operation is carried out before drying and ignition of the precipitate. Okay, that operation filtration is carried out before drying and ignition of the precipitate. The porous media useful for filtration are filter papers, okay, filter mats of purified asbestos, or porous treated plates of resistance glass. Okay, these are the porous media which are generally used for filtration. Okay, in lab generally we use filter papers. There are different types of filter paper: ordinary filter paper, Wortmann filter paper number 40, 41. Okay, the choice of filter paper is depends upon the nature of the precipitate. So filtering medium is made according to the nature of the precipitate. Then next point is the washing of the precipitate. After filtration, okay, the precipitate should be washed by using some appropriate solvent. Which solvent is useful for washing? Then there are various conditions for choice of wash liquid. Okay, we see one by one. Let's see washing of the precipitate. Generally, precipitate is washed either with water or specified wash liquid before it is dried and weighed. That process is necessary because due to the washing, the impurities which are present on the surface of precipitate are removed. Generally, that precipitate is washed with water or specified wash liquid, okay, before that precipitate is dyed and weighed. The objective of washing the precipitate is what? To remove the impurities on the surface of the precipitate. The choice of the wash liquid depends upon solubility and chemical properties of the precipitate. Okay, which type of wash liquid is used? That nature of wash liquid or choice of wash liquid is depends upon solubility of the chemical properties of the precipitate. The tendency of the precipitate to undergo peptization, the impurities to be removed, and the influence of the traces of the wash liquid upon the subsequent treatment of the precipitate before weighing. Okay, on all these conditions, the choice of the wash liquid is depend. Generally, water in many cases cannot be used as a wash liquid because it produces peptization. Water causes peptization of the precipitate or losses due to solubility of the precipitate. So, in many cases, water cannot be used as a wash liquid. Generally, a solution of some electrolyte is employed as wash liquid. Okay, electrolytic solution is used as a wash liquid. Water is not used because why? Because it produces peptization of the precipitate and losses due to the solubility of the precipitate are also takes place. So generally some electrolytic solution is employed as a wash liquid, and this should possess some common ion. That electrolytic solution should possess some common ion with the precipitate in order to reduce the solubility errors, and should easily be volatilized in the drying of the precipitate before weighing. Okay, that electrolytic solution which containing the common ion with the precipitate in order to reduce what? Solubility. We know that due to the common ion effect, solubility is reduced. Okay, and that electrolytic solution should be volatilized easily in the drying process before the weighing. So for these reasons, ammonia salts or ammonia solution and dilute acids are commonly used as a wash liquids.